The senator from Texas.
Madam President, I appreciate the comments of my colleague from Kansas. Coming from Texas, this is a familiar topic because we have a 1,200-mile common border with Mexico, and illegal immigration, drug smuggling, and everything that goes along with it has been something we've had to live with pretty much alone for a long time. But now, as we've heard some people say, every state has become a border state. Every city is a border city because what happens at the border does not stay at the border. You get migrants who ultimately make their ways to big cities like New York, Washington, D.C., Chicago. The mayor of New York says a few thousand migrants showing up in New York will destroy New York City. Well, what about the 7 million people that have come across the southern border and then released into the interior of the United States? Released at the Texas-Mexico border. Not a lot of empathy, not a lot of sympathy for what we've had to endure, our border communities and the people of Texas, not to mention the billions of dollars that we've had to spend of taxpayer money by Texans to do the federal government's job. It's outrageous. And the part that is most tragic is, of course, all the lives lost to the drugs that come across the southern border. What the Biden administration does not seem to understand, or if they seem to be in willful suspense of their power of disbelief, is that the 71,000 Americans who died of fentanyl overdoses last year, those drugs come from synthetic opioids made from precursors, come from China, go to Mexico, made into something that looks like a pharmaceutical product, relatively innocuous, but fentanyl poisoning is the leading cause of death of Americans 18 to 45 years of age. You know, I keep asking myself, what's it going to take? What's it going to take for the Biden administration to wake up and do something about it, to do its job? Well, obviously, 7 million migrants, that's not enough. 108,000 dead Americans, apparently that doesn't get President Biden's attention. How about the 300,000 children, the unaccompanied minors that have been placed with sponsors in the interior of the United States? The New York Times documented that in 85,000 cases, when a call was made 30 days after the child was placed with a sponsor, there was no answer. There have been some terrible stories about forced labor and very dangerous jobs, but it doesn't take imagination to realize that what the Biden administration has done is lose basically 300,000 children. We don't know whether they're going to school. We don't know whether they're getting the health care they need. We don't know whether they're being trafficked for sex, forced into involuntary servitude. We don't know, and the only conclusion I can reach is the Biden administration and the President of the United States does not care. He doesn't care. Because if he did care, he would do something about it. Well, because we have been met with complete intransigence by the Biden administration and by the majority here in the Senate when it comes to solving some of these problems on a bipartisan basis, there are many of us who'd be willing to work on a bill. We've worked on bills. I see the senator from South Carolina who bears the scars of having worked in the immigration issue many years, as have I. This is a tough, hard issue. But enough is enough. And we're not going to proceed to this emergency supplemental that the President has asked for unless and until policy changes are made to our asylum policy, the catch and release policies, that will stem the flow of millions of migrants across the border only to be released into the United States. It will not happen. I'm confident of that. So I won't go through the statistics. Let me just mention one example. You know, it makes no sense for migrants who come from places like Haiti to move to South America to avoid what are admittedly dire circumstances in Haiti, only to live in South America and then when the opportunity presents itself to show up in Del Rio, Texas and claim asylum. They have escaped the circumstances which caused them to leave Haiti and living in a safe third country. So why is it that under the current policies, we say, okay, if you make it to the US border, we'll let you in if you claim asylum? Well, you're claiming a credible fear of persecution based on what happened to you in Haiti, not what happened to you in South America. Yet this is a huge flashing green light and a welcome mat for people anywhere around the world who want to make their way to our southern border. Eagle Pass Mayor Rolando Salinas has said that the city of Eagle Pass has lost at least $500,000 during a closure of a bridge due to the influx of migrants. You know, one of the things we did during President Trump's tenure in office, which I think was one of the most significant, was we passed the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement in recognition of the fact our economies in North America are intertwined and that millions of Americans' jobs depend on that flow of legitimate trade and commerce across our international bridges. But again, one of the other consequences of President Biden's border crisis is that even the benefits of that trade and legitimate commerce are being denied because resources at our bridges and ports of entry are being overwhelmed. I mentioned New York City. Last year, more than 130,000 migrants have arrived in New York City. That city spent $2 billion to manage the crisis. That's a drop in the bucket compared to what the state of Texas has had to do over recent years. But it's no surprise that the mayor and others in New York have taken notice. I think that's the point. Governor Abbott knew that if the Biden administration was going to ignore the plight of border states like Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, and California, that maybe he would care if these migrants showed up in New York City. Now, a poll has shown that New Yorkers are overwhelmingly concerned about the influx of migrants in their state and in their city. 82% said it was a serious problem. So why doesn't President Biden, who maybe doesn't care about a red state like Texas, but he should care about a blue state? The truth is he should care about the entire United States, but let's just maybe question why he would ignore the pleas of Mayor Adams and the voters in New York State, a state that probably was responsible for his margin of victory in the last presidential election. Well, he continues to ignore it, and in fact, the Senate Majority Leader from New York, where Mayor Adams is mayor of the major capital city there, despite the fact that Senator Schumer represents that same state, he's criticized the Republican effort to actually address the Biden border crisis. He's called it partisan and hard right. Well, frankly, that's all the Majority Leader and our Democratic colleagues have been willing to do. But we're not going to miss this opportunity to get true policy changes which help stem the flow of illegal migration across the border. It's clear that the President and Secretary Mayorkas, who's been an absolute unmitigated disaster as Secretary of Homeland Security, I told him at the last hearing we had I have lost confidence, any confidence in your willingness to do your job. You should resign. Well, he continues to show up and testify under oath and to lie when he says the border's secure. Well, anybody with eyes in their head can tell that that's not true. And he's told the Border Patrol, don't actually tell anybody what's happening at the border. Well, enough is enough. We're not going anywhere on this supplemental appropriation bill until and unless acceptable provisions are made to change the policies that currently implement the Biden border crisis and to staunch the flow of drugs and people across the border. Madam President, I yield the floor.
Madam President.
The senator from South Carolina.